themes. Can I just hear some themes? What were just like, give me a few words about the themes of the stories. Like what was making that a time that lit you up? What was it about it?
Connection.
There was connection, okay?
Change.
Change. So you were embracing change in your life, new things.
Helping others to heal.
What's that?
Helping others to heal.
Helping others. Whether, yeah, to heal, probably a lot of people get a lot of joy from that, from helping others, however you do that. What else?
Expressing yourself.
Full expression, expressing yourself, yeah.
Self-love.
Learn how to love ourselves. I think it's our biggest human task. It's so simple and it's the biggest one, right?
Boundaries. Community.
Creating community, being a part of community.
Letting go and going for it.
Letting go and going for it. Yep.
Living by purpose.
Living in your purpose. Knowing that you're living in your purpose. Did I hear romance? Get some romance in there, right? Romance is good. Anything else? I didn't get. Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about. And I think that when we really light up our fire, we get into that place of full sexual empowerment, which drives everything we do. That's my worldview. That we get to create a life that's made up of lots of moments like that. And that's the idea, right? Because we want to be lit up. We want to be on fire. We want to be in our purpose. We want to be in our love for ourselves and then have that emanate for others. So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit of my story, how I came to this. And if you like to tweet, I love tweets. I'm an Amy Jo Garner. So when I was in my 20s, I went to New York to get my master's degree in human sexuality education. And I figured out that was my purpose at a really young age. And I feel very, very blessed that that came to me at a really young age, because I know that it doesn't for everyone. So I moved to New York, and I was in school, and I decided I was going to write my thesis on masturbation. And I had read Sex for One, The Joy of Self-Loving. Has anyone read that? Betty Dodson? Shout out. And that book changed my life. I think books can change our lives. I know they can. That was one of those books for me. So I said, well, I've got to call the godmother of masturbation herself. That's a recent picture. All my old ones are in storage. But so I said, I've got to call Betty Dodson and talk to Betty Dodson. I'm working on this project on masturbation. And I had been going to these sexuality conferences. They're called like Quad S, the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexuality. And they were a little stuffy back then. I don't know how they are now, but there was a lot of white men who were leading those conferences. They did not take kindly to students and young people like me who were new into the field and all bushy-tailed and excited and wanting to soak up everything. But I found some really great mentors in that space. And so we got these like handbooks they would mail you in the mail with everyone's address and phone number. So I was like, well, let me look in the handbook and see if there's anything about Betty Dodson in there. Sure enough, all her info was there. And I called up on the phone, and she answered her own phone, and I was like, speechless. I was like, this is Betty. She's like, well, yeah, darling, but who do you think answers my phone? I was like, I don't know. I thought I'd have to jump through 8 hoops to get to you. She was someone I really admired. And she immediately embraced me. And immediately, she was so supportive, was so delighted that I was doing that project. And took me under her wing, and I brought her to speak at NYU, and then I started working with her on many of her projects. And she did a film called Viva la Vulva. Has anyone seen it?
Yeah.
You've seen a very young AJ in that film. Whoops. So she made this film, Viva la Vulva. That's the picture from the internet, so of the women. So she wanted to make this film about vulvas, and she asked me to be in it, and I said, well, who else is in the video? And she started talking about who was in the video. And they were all white women, and I was like, Betty, you cannot make a film about vulvas and have all white vulvas in film. That's super, super important that there's some diversity in a film like that. And she got it, but she didn't know how to go about it. So my best friend Jillian Gonzalez and I started talking to women and trying to find women who would be willing to be in a film like that, because that's a really big risk to be in a film like that. We were pretty exposed. Everyone's seeing our genitals really up close. Not your everyday project. What do you think? So, you know, there were several women of color who wanted to be a part of the film and came to be a part of it. And I think they show it in like sexual attitude reassessments now. I don't even know who all's seen it. I'm like, don't tell me. Just, it's okay. But it was an important moment, and I knew, and it's still important, and we still have a long ways to go on that. I was starting to do a lot of performance in New York City. I was in the like 90s drag king scene. That's me as a young drag king.
Cute.
And I got my fire really lit up around performance, and I started doing plays and one-woman shows, and I got really, really interested in doing and what one of my mentors would call a magnificent obsession. It became my obsession. Have you ever had that creative obsession that you're like, every bone in my body has to create this thing. Like, it has to come out in the world. And so that thing for me was a play called Volvolution. And I worked with an awesome director and co-writer, Julia Murphy, and we wrote what I think is a pretty entertaining play. And we put it up at the Wow Cafe Theater, which was the oldest and, to our knowledge, only women's theater in the entire world, which is now a women's and trans theater in New York City. It's still there. And one of my friends, Laura, from the theater, told me, she said, be really careful what you put up on stage, because it will come true. And I took that really seriously. And I started to really think about that idea. And I was trying to figure out how to get these ideas out to the world. And of course, my framework for that was education. So we created a play about this women's sexuality workshop, and all these women that would come to learn about sexuality each week, and they all had like funny stories, and you know, there was a lot of humor in the play. And we cast a woman of color as the facilitator of the group, because I felt like that was really important to put a different image forth of who those leaders could be. And I played one of the characters, one of the people that came in. And so there was a lot of humor, there was a lot of fantasy scenes, there was a lot of flashbacks, and you got to follow these women and learn about their sexual stories and where they had been, the shame they were carrying, help them, like watch them through their growth process and shedding that shame, and really come into their own knowledge and their own power. And then we had two stars of the show that I brought for you that I wanted you to meet today. I'm not gonna have enough hands to do all this. Here, this one can help me. If you were in my workshop the other day, you have to meet them. So, they've been with me all this time since 1999. So, this is Penelope Pussy, and this is Sally Snatch over here, holding Mike. Thanks, Sally. Sally always was like a little grumpy. She always had like an itch or just like something irritating going on. She didn't like to talk to people. She wasn't particularly like social. Penelope, on the other hand, very enthusiastic, very, very social. She sort of was super friendly, and you know, they were kind of the stars of the show, so they got to have a lot of conversation in Volvolution. So they have been with me all this time. They have been with me through a whole lot of things, a whole lot of workshops. And so, so I knew at that point that I would create something a little bit different one day. Betty decided she wanted to train her first group of sex coaches. in her method of sex coaching. And to my knowledge, she was the first person to call herself a sex coach. Other people might think different. Doesn't really matter. And so she wanted to train people in her method. You know, she's literally helped, I think, more people on the planet learn how to have orgasms than any other human being. That is no small contribution. That's huge. And so she wanted to train some people, so I helped her arrange that training, get people, you know, organize it, and did the training with her. And I knew that was just a piece of what I wanted to do. I knew that there was a bigger way in which I wanted to work with women. And I came into the field as a young feminist, wanting to work with women and girls, wanting to empower them. And then over the course of time, I spent 12 years working with youth. I spent 15 years working with college students. I worked with people of different genders. I did a lot of work in LGBT communities. And I've kind of circled back now and focused my work on women's sexual empowerment, whoever identifies in that way, whoever comes to that. And the first vision of my women's program was on that stage. And it took me 12 years to go from that vision, that dream, that workshop, that creative piece, to bringing that into the world in a real way. Because I had a lot of work to do. I had to, you know, go through my own processes of empowerment. I had to gain my own wisdom. I had to be able to really hold a room of women who were going to go deep and excavate and really express things that they may have never expressed anywhere. And I wasn't ready to do that in 1999. But I was ready to put it up and have that vision and to hold that vision. And it took that long for me to really step into that. And 5 years ago, I finally launched that program, and I just graduated my 5th generation of women from that program in June. Thank you. And, you know, Betty invited me to be a part of this group, this women's professional sexuality group. And they would meet once a month, and she invited both my best friend Jillian and I to be a part of that group. We were the youngest members of that group. And I was absolutely terrified. I would sit in this room with women whose books I'd read, whose work I respected, and felt like, what am I ever going to offer? What am I ever going to have to say? How am I ever going to live up to the brilliance that these women have attained and are able to express so, you know, effortlessly almost, it seemed like. And it would be entertaining sometimes to watch like Betty and Leonore Tiefer, if you know her work. I mean, they're like